The afternoon sun in the United States was heavy, thick with the kind of humidity that clings to the skin and slows the blood. But in the 55th minute of that semifinal, nobody in the stadium was thinking about the heat. When Anthony Gordon drove the ball past the Argentinian goalkeeper and into the back of the net, the world seemed to tilt on its axis for English football. He sprinted toward the corner flag, his body moving with the raw, unfiltered adrenaline of a young man who believed he had just rewritten history, and launched into an arrogant, triumphant knee slide across the pristine American turf. In that singular, fleeting moment, you could feel the collective exhale of a nation. Before we dive into today's breakdown, a quick shout out to those who live, breathe, and lose sleep over this beautiful game. If you are tired of shallow hot takes and crave deep tactical analysis, raw football passion, and storytelling that goes far beyond the 90 minutes, welcome to your new home, Section 101, Football. This isn't just another YouTube channel. It's our digital terrace, the place where we dissect the chalkboard, celebrate the legends, and debate the game with the depth it truly deserves. Subscribe to Section 101, Football, on YouTube, and join the conversation. Millions of people watching across the North Sea, in packed pubs and quiet living rooms, suddenly allowed themselves to believe that the 60-year curse, the endless cycle of hope and heartbreak that has defined English football since 1966, was finally dissolving. It was a beautiful illusion, a brief glimpse of a golden future, before the cold, mechanical hands of Thomas Tuchel pulled them violently back down to earth. What followed was not a failure of talent, nor was it a consequence of Argentinian genius. It was a profound, self-inflicted, tactical tragedy. Instead of recognizing the psychological fracture within the Argentinian ranks, instead of instructing his players to press home their advantage and suffocate an opponent that was visibly rocking, the German manager chose the path of ultimate caution, a choice that bordered on tactical surrender. He began to systematically dismantle his own attacking engine. Off came the dynamic, terrifying runners who had kept the South Americans on their heels, and on came Konsa, Nico O'Reilly, and Dan Burn. It was the footballing equivalent of building a concrete wall inside a glass house. By retreating into a passive, low defensive block, Tuchel did not protect his lead. He merely gifted the ball, the territory, and the emotional momentum to an Argentinian side that thrives on the scent of vulnerability. The relentless, suffocating pressure that followed was entirely predictable, and when the goals inevitably arrived in the 85th and 92nd minutes, it felt less like a cruel twist of fate and more like a mathematical certainty. It was a harsh, unforgiving lesson in the dangers of managerial timidity, a reminder that in the highest echelons of the international game, if you try to steal a victory through cowardice, football will almost always find a way to punish you. When we step away from the immediate anger of the radio phone-ins and the sensationalist headlines, we have to look at what remains. The upcoming third-place playoff between England and France is already being dismissed by many as a meaningless exercise, a commercial obligation played out in front of a fatigued crowd. But if you look closer, if you understand the deeper currents that move these two footballing superpowers, this match becomes something far more fascinating. It is a mirror, reflecting the painful, often ugly evolution of modern international football. A space where the fine line between scientific pragmatism and tactical fear has been completely erased. This is not just a game. It is a collision between two deeply wounded giants, both suffering from severe internal fractures and the heavy weight of public skepticism. On one side, you have Tuchel's England, a squad overflowing with generational attacking talent that has been psychologically chained by a philosophy of risk aversion. On the other side, you have a French team under Didier Deschamps that appears to be disintegrating from within, its collective soul eroded by years of pragmatic compromise and sudden dressing room rebellions. In a tournament where the joy of the game has so often been strangled by cautious systems and fear of failure, this match offers a strange, involuntary liberation. Stripped of the ultimate pressure of the trophy, both managers are forced into a position of absolute vulnerability. They must confront their own philosophical errors before the internal rot becomes permanent. To truly understand the depth of England's failure against Argentina, we have to examine the history of the system Tuchel tried to employ. The idea of retreating into a deep, impenetrable shape to protect a slender lead is a direct descendant of the classic Italian Catenaccio, a philosophy born out of tactical necessity and defensive mastery in a different era. But when you take that historical blueprint and try to force it onto a contemporary English generation that has been educated in the high-pressing, vertical, expansive world of modern club football, it becomes an act of ideological violence. You cannot ask players who spend their winters destroying opponents from Manchester City, Arsenal, and Real Madrid to suddenly behave like a relegation-threatened side trying to survive the final 20 minutes at Anfield. This tactical mismatch did more than just isolate Harry Kane and starve the wingers of service. It altered the psychological state of the entire team. It sent a clear signal from the bench to the pitch that the manager did not trust his players to keep the ball, that he feared the opponent more than he believed in his own philosophy. When former icons like Wayne Rooney, Michael Owen, and Gary Lineker launched their post-match assaults, using phrases that cut deep into the manager's reputation, they were reacting to this fundamental contradiction. They saw a world-class strategist, a man hired precisely for his elite tournament pedigree, behaving with the tactical desperation of an amateur. It is a modern paradox where the sheer terror of losing completely paralyzes the desire to win, leaving a group of magnificent footballers looking lost within a system that treats their creativity as a dangerous liability. Now, as the squad prepares to face France, Tuchel finds himself standing at a dangerous professional crossroads. He knows that another display of negative, reactive football will turn the current wave of public disappointment into a permanent storm, one that could easily destroy his authority before the next domestic season even begins. The match against the French cannot be approached with the same conservative playbook. He is forced by the sheer weight of circumstance to unlock the shackles, to allow players like Kane, Gordon, and Bukayo Saka to occupy the half spaces and drive the team forward with progressive vertical passing. These players need to be positioned where they can hurt the opposition, not transformed into temporary wingbacks chasing opposition defenders toward their own corner flags. This shift toward an open, proactive approach is not just a tactical adjustment to exploit a weakened French defense. It has become a matter of national pride. It is an opportunity for this English team to make a statement about who they are and how they believe the game should be played. A declaration that they intend to control their own destiny through positive action, rather than praying for survival in their own penalty box. Yet, this attempt at tactical rebirth is severely complicated by the dark cloud hanging over their most influential player. The image of Jude Bellingham after the final whistle of the semifinal was a portrait of raw, uncontrolled fury. The Real Madrid midfielder, who has been the undisputed heartbeat of this English campaign with his 6 goals and 2 crucial assists, allowed the immense frustration of the defeat and the calculated provocations of the Argentinian players to completely overwhelm his discipline. His physical confrontation with Valentin Barco was the action of a young king who realized his crown had been taken away. An emotional explosion from a player who carries the expectations of an entire nation on his shoulders every time he steps onto the pitch. With FIFA launching a formal investigation, the very real prospect of a suspension looms over the camp. If Bellingham is banned from the stadium, England does not just lose a magnificent athlete, they lose their emotional anchor. He is a player who connects the lines, the one who demands the ball in the tightest spaces and possesses the unique ability to arrive late in the penalty area to change the course of a match. Without him, Tuchel's midfield loses its dynamism, leaving a creative void that is incredibly difficult to fill given the lack of similar profiles in the squad. The problems within the English camp, however, run much deeper than the potential absence of their star midfielder. The tactical choices made in the semi-final have created an undercurrent of resentment that is beginning to break through the carefully managed public relations facade. Reports from inside the camp suggest that senior figures, led by central defender Marc Guehi, have refused to stay silent about their disagreement with Tuchel's negative changes. When international footballers lose faith in their manager's courage, the entire structural integrity of the project begins to decay. A locker room is a delicate ecosystem built on mutual trust. The moment the players begin to feel that the man on the bench is sabotaging their strengths out of fear, the tactical diagrams on the whiteboard lose all meaning. Tuchel is no longer just preparing a plan to defeat France. He is fighting a silent war to regain the respect of his own dressing room, knowing that a disconnected performance in the third-place match will confirm the player's worst fears about his leadership. Across the channel, the picture is equally bleak, if not more toxic. The French national team arrives at this fixture after a semi-final performance against Spain that felt like the definitive end of an era. For years, Didier Deschamps has relied on a style of football that mirrored the rhythms of the street, loose, highly individualistic, dependent on sudden bursts of individual genius from extraordinary athletes to bail out a lack of structural cohesion. But when they encountered the highly sophisticated, beautifully synchronized pressing and possession system of Luis de la Fuente's Spain, the French machine simply stopped working. The 2-0 scoreline did not even begin to capture the scale of the tactical superiority. Despite possessing Kylian Mbappe, who had scored 8 goals leading up to that match, along with the youthful brilliance of Michael Olise and Ousmane Dembele, France looked like a collection of talented strangers standing on a field, waiting for someone else to fix the problem. There was no collective movement, no automated passing lanes, no systemic understanding of how to break down a compact defensive unit. It was a stark, undeniable demonstration that in the modern international game, individual brilliance can no longer consistently overcome a disciplined, collective identity. To make matters worse, the French tactical structure has been completely compromised by a medical update that feels like a fatal blow to their immediate future. William Saliba, the exceptional central defender who has developed into the absolute foundation of their defensive line, is facing a 5-month absence due to a severe back injury that will likely require surgical intervention. It is impossible to overstate the importance of Saliba to this French side. He was not just a defender who won his individual duels. His extraordinary recovery speed and spatial awareness allowed Deschamps to field an aggressive, high defensive line, providing the essential security that allowed the attacking players to stay advanced during transition phases. Without his calm, commanding presence at the back, the entire French defensive ecosystem becomes fragile. A partnership without Saliba is vulnerable to the clever, intuitive movement of Harry Kane, who delights in pulling central defenders out of position and exposing the space behind them. Deschamps is forced to patch together a defensive unit using options that lack the elite international experience required at this level, turning an already vulnerable area into a target for an angry English attack. But the most dangerous wound inside the French camp is not physical, it is psychological. The French footballing culture has a long, turbulent history of internal destruction, where massive egos and personal rivalries have repeatedly torn successful squads apart from within. The latest revelations published by L'Équipe have confirmed that the old demons have returned to haunt Les Bleus. The halftime interval during the defeat to Spain was reportedly the scene of a bitter, aggressive argument that shattered whatever unity remained in the squad. Ousmane Dembele, fresh from his 2025 Ballon d'Or triumph, reportedly chose that moment to loudly criticize the team's defensive pressing triggers, accusing his teammates of failing to support the forward line. This did not sit well with the rest of the locker room. Several senior players immediately turned on him, pointing out that his own performance had been wasteful and defensive tracking non-existent, suggesting that his criticisms were merely a pathetic attempt to deflect attention from his own failures. When a player who has reached the absolute pinnacle of individual recognition loses the respect of his peers, the social hierarchy of the team collapses. The dressing room is no longer a sanctuary. It is a battleground of resentment. This internal conflict is further fueled by the anger of N'Golo Kanté, a footballer whose career has been defined by humility and an absolute devotion to the collective cause. For Kanté to openly express his fury at Deschamps for his exclusion from the starting lineup against Spain tells you everything you need to know about the breakdown of authority within the camp. When you lose the loyalty of a character like Kanté, you have lost the moral compass of your squad. The players are looking at a manager whose tactical ideas feel increasingly outdated, and they are doing so while the immense, unavoidable shadow of Zinedine Zidane hangs over the entire federation. Everyone inside that traveling party knows that Deschamps is a manager whose time has effectively run out, with the public and the media demanding his resignation the moment the tournament concludes to allow the legendary number 10 to take control. In an environment where the manager's voice has lost its power and the players are already thinking about their post-tournament holiday plans, creating the psychological intensity required for a third-place playoff is a near impossible task for the coaching staff. This profound difference in motivation and emotional urgency is the critical factor that will likely decide the outcome of this match. Football at this level is never just a matter of magnets on a tactical board. It is governed by the human spirit, by the willingness of an individual to suffer for the man next to him. Right now, the French squad looks like a group of exhausted men who have mentally checked out, their bags packed, their minds already resting on beaches far away from the pressures of international scrutiny. Mbappe and his compatriots have won the biggest prizes in the game. A bronze medal offers no value to their legacies, and they have little desire to risk their bodies for a manager they no longer believe in. For England, however, the context is entirely different. Despite the deep anger directed at Tuchel, the players themselves possess a powerful, desperate need for self-preservation and validation. They understand that a heavy defeat to France will turn their homecoming into a nightmare, whereas a convincing victory will allow them to salvage some degree of professional respect and provide a shield against the worst of the media criticism. For Tuchel himself, this is a must-win fixture. He needs a positive result to protect his position and maintain his credibility before the heavy machinery of the domestic season begins to roll. We must be careful, of course, not to completely dismiss France based solely on their internal drama. The history of French football is filled with moments where they have looked completely broken, only to produce a performance of breathtaking, spontaneous brilliance, powered by the sheer depth of their natural talent. Even without Saliba, and even within a fractured system, players of the caliber of Mbappe and Olise can alter the reality of a football match in a fraction of a second. If Jude Bellingham's suspension is confirmed, the English midfield will lack the physical power and defensive awareness needed to control the central areas of the pitch. If Tuchel allows his natural conservatism to creep back into his decision-making, if he reacts to the French attacking names by pulling his team deep into another low block, he will be repeating the exact same mistake that ruined their tournament against Argentina. France, even in a state of emotional decline, possesses too much individual quality to be ignored. If you give them the ball and invite them to attack your penalty area without pressure, they will eventually find a way through. The nature of the third place match itself usually works against defensive caution. Historically, these games are played with a freedom and openness that you rarely see in the tense, tactical chess matches of the knockout rounds. With the ultimate pressure removed, players tend to revert to their natural instincts, playing with the joy and risk-taking characteristic of youth football. Given the significant defensive issues facing both teams, France missing their defensive anchor in Saliba, and England struggling with a lack of protection from a disrupted midfield, we are highly likely to see an entertaining, high-scoring encounter. The spaces between the lines will be vast, the transition phases will be constant, and the tactical discipline that both managers spent weeks drilling into their squads will likely dissolve within the first 20 minutes. The team that manages to stay compact during these wild transitions, the team that shows even a fraction more defensive organization when the game becomes chaotic, will be the one that comes out on top. When you weigh all these complex elements together, the relative psychological stability of the two camps, the contrasting motivations of the coaches, and the profound tactical issues created by injuries and suspensions, the balance tips toward England. They possess a 55% probability of victory compared to 45% for the French, a margin dictated not by a superiority of talent, but by a superiority of collective purpose in this specific moment. The French camp is a house divided against itself, a group of brilliant individuals who have lost the desire to fight as a unit. England, despite their internal debates regarding Tuchel's philosophy, still retain the hunger of a generation that has won nothing, a group of players who desperately want to prove that they are better than the timid performance that cost them a place in the final. A final scoreline of 2-1, or perhaps a chaotic 3-2 in favor of England, feels like the logical conclusion to this strange journey, a result that will allow them to bring the bronze medal back across the Atlantic. Yet, we should not allow a victory in this match to obscure the larger, more uncomfortable truths that this tournament has exposed. Long after the medals have been handed out and the stadiums have gone dark, the image that will linger in the memory of English football fans is the sight of Jude Bellingham's tears of frustration after the semi-final defeat. It will stand as a permanent, painful monument to what might have been, a reminder of a magnificent generation of attacking footballers whose natural brilliance was compromised by the cautious calculations of their coach. A bronze medal won against a disinterested French team cannot fix the tactical errors made on that humid night against Argentina. Nor will it silence the fundamental debate regarding the direction of English football under Thomas Tuchel. The final whistle tomorrow will bring down the curtain on this American campaign, but the argument over the soul of this team and the question of whether they have the courage to match their talent is an argument that will continue to burn for a very long time.